Hello there, welcome back to the Urban Creative channel. We have an interesting video today. 5 simple pivots you need to do to become a successful freelancer. Let's get into it. But before we do, I gotta give a special shout out to my friend of mine, Chris Dax. We're at his art studio in the heart of Bushwick. We have another new painting up to check out. I'm gonna figure out what the name of it is and put it down here. So, and again, anybody that's a photographer or videographer looking for a studio space to, book for a client or even just a personal project, reach out to me. I'll make sure that we can get that set up for you. And I just got to quickly mention, I wrote a book about a cat, my childhood cat, named Ralph. Link in the description for Amazon. Please go cop it, write a 5-star review. That'd be greatly appreciated. Okay, let's get on with this damn thing. 5 simple pivots you need to do to become a successful freelancer. Let's get into the number 1, numero uno. And it's a very simple step that a lot of times people often forget or don't think about, but it's very, very important. And that is to be presentable. And what do I mean by being presentable? I mean that from a visual standpoint. So you're gonna need, one of the biggest things I always just tell everyone is that check your LinkedIn profile and what do you have there as your headshot photo. If it's a photo that was like 10 years ago while you was in college, it was at your guys' OSU championship tailgate party and you're over here with a beer bong in your hand.
See, that's a talented man right there. That's what I'm talking. Fill it up again.
I think you might want to change that, okay? Because the headshot is actually very important. It just brings this certain level of trust and certain level of presentability and be able to give you credibility just from a photo itself. I know it sounds crazy, but I think a lot of times the jobs that I get noticed or at least get in the room for an interview for or a phone call is because they looked at my profile photo and they're like, wow, this guy looks like somebody I can trust. I'll even do a split second to my photo right there. You see what I mean? It looks trustworthy. It looks like I know what I'm doing. I'm a credible candidate. So definitely invest in a headshot. And I will even take it a step further. Don't try to do this on your own. I think it's very smart and a good idea to hire a photographer to do headshot photos for you. They'll know what body position that you should take, whether you should have your arms folded or if you do something a little bit more pensive, depending on the industry that you're in. Like the photographer that specializes in these type of headshots, they know the expert way to present you in the best way. So definitely look into it. It's not that expensive to get a headshot photo done. I would definitely recommend having a photographer help you out with that. So number 2, create a website / portfolio, but that looks like an agency. So the reason why I bring up the agency part than just having it as a portfolio is that sometimes I feel when you just have it as a portfolio and the URL is not even like a URL that you bought, it's some free one that just says, your name and my portfolio, it just looks a little less authentic and less legit. I think one of the reasons why I've done pretty good as far as getting clients to recognize me and really see what I do is that I've always presented Urban Creative as an agency, and the more you kind of present it that way where your logo and colors are all tied in together with your URL, with your social media, and you have like a consistent theme on the name and the branding, it really goes it goes a long way. And people look at your website like, wow, they're like a legit agency here. And if you pivot it that way, from a freelancing standpoint, that's a good idea. And actually, just as a pro tip, I would even take it a little step further. On your About page or Meet the Team, when you're in the freelancing industry, you always end up working with different people that are also freelancing. So for me, since I'm a videographer, I work with photographers that I trust. I work with video editors that I trust and, marketing strategy people as well. It's always a good idea that you can speak with them to see if they're cool with them being a part of your team, So, because if you have a project that a client is like, yeah, I need to get videography done, but they also need to get photography done, then they can look at your website and see like, oh, actually Eric, yeah, he has like this team of creative people that he taps into, and that's great. It just makes you look, more authentic and shows that you actually have like a cohesive like agency with people that you work with all the time. So the third one, and probably the least one that you just don't want to do, and myself included, but you just gotta do it. I hate to say it, it is what it is. You have to promote your work on social media. You have to put yourself out there and, really show the projects that you're working on. I know when I first started doing, freelance, and I started taking it seriously where, I wanted to do it like full time and be, as remote as I can be and what have you. I had a hard time promoting my stuff on there because I was always second guessing if it's quality work or whatever. But really at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, And the reason why it doesn't matter is because, yeah, people will look at it, but it's okay if you don't get any likes from it or you don't get any comments, because you can have a bunch of people that are your friends or your followers on whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and, I recommend just promoting it on all of them as much as you can. Is that even though that they don't, engage in it, that doesn't mean that they didn't view it, and it doesn't mean that they're not gonna keep you top of mind. And what I mean by top of mind is that you're always reminding people that you do this type of work because people are busy and they forget, they forget that you're in that industry or whatever you're doing. A lot of times I would notice that. Like I wasn't promoting that much and people didn't even really know that I did video, or people didn't know that I, work on websites and stuff like that. So for me, I always try to just at least once a week show something behind the scenes, even if it's part of a logo or part of a web page, anything creative. Just put your project up there and talk about it a little bit and, let people just take a look at it, because that will ultimately trickle in work at some point. Your friends or your family are going to recommend you to one of their friends that need, a wedding done or an event to get shot for. So yeah, it just happens a lot. You wouldn't think that it does, but it does trickle in the business. And I feel like you just got to keep that momentum and that relevancy up. You can't just not have posts and stuff, and you have to actually keep it consistent too. So it's not about like the quality of the work. I mean, it is, but it's more about the consistency, that you can't just stop posting after like, 2 months and give up, because then it makes you look like less reputable, or like, oh, that must have been just a hobby for him. You know what I mean? So don't try to go that route. At least try to post like every other week or something to keep it relevant. And again, you don't have to always show the finished product. That's one thing I always messed up on too. Always felt like, oh, I need to show the end result, the polished video all the time. No, you don't. You can really show the behind the scenes work. You can, me setting up this lighting equipment and, just telling the story a little bit. People want to know like, oh, that's the program that you use, and you can just do a little screen cap of you working on some flyer that you did a graphic design for. So, those are things to keep in mind, and definitely that's a big important one that is you got to promote on social media. Yeah, so the fourth one is one that I think people often overlook, but it's very true. You need to get your online presence out there, and what I mean by that is you need to get on some type of platform that you can promote your freelance services to. And what I mean by that is either Fiverr or Upwork. Look into those platforms. If you've never heard of them, take a look, do your research, watch some YouTube videos. You can ask me, book a consultation, because I actually myself, I don't use Fiverr, but I know a lot of people that do, and I use Upwork myself. I'll have another video on why, I guess, like on some of those reasons. You can go on Fiverr, just, you just gotta at least focus on at least one. See, these platforms are good because you establish an online presence and you also establish a review system where, like, if you're good at what you do, and it doesn't have to be creative, they have all sorts of things on these platforms like accounting, language, it runs the gamut. So check it out. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a creative thing that you need to know and be good at. But it's really good as a freelancer to be on these platforms because it's going to trickle in projects that you wouldn't often get, that you wouldn't get noticed from like your regular network. I think a lot of times when I speak with creatives, they don't even think about these platforms because they think like, oh, they take too much money, the budgets are always low. But that's not the case. I've had some of my best clients on Upwork, to be honest with you, and they're still my clients to this day that, you know, just ongoing business like every year. And the thing is you just can't really pigeonhole yourself into relying always on your network. You know, whether it was your network from the school that you graduated or the circle of people or people that you used to work with, and you're like, oh yeah, well, I have all these people from my old job, I can always tap into them. You're just going to end up forcing your network and relying on asking people all the time about like, hey, can I get a project here and this and that? I mean, you should have both. You should have your network of people that you get projects from and continuously build out that network, but you also need an online presence. And that's what I mean is like, you know, Fiverr, Upwork, or any of these other freelancing sites are just, it's just a really good way to like have both, you know, because if this one goes low, then this one will probably be busy or vice versa. And last but not least, this is a very important pivot that I think a lot of times people just don't think about, or they haven't thought of it in this way, is that you have to change your mindset in a sense of the, you know, if you're coming from the corporate world, if you're coming from a traditional like 9-to-5 job, you have to switch your 9-to-5 mindset to 24/7. And I know that seems like that might suck because you're like, 24/7, that's like a lot. But I'll get to that point of why it's good to do it this way anyhow. But first, the reason why you need to change is because I think oftentimes people want to start doing freelance work, but then they still keep that 9-to-5 mindset. Like, hey, I'm only going to work Monday through Friday a certain time, and that's it. Like, I'm not going to answer, you know, emails or send a message really quick after those hours, and that's that. And I always have the weekends off and everything like that. But I'm just saying, in a sense, if you want to become a successful freelancer, you got to pivot that to have your mindset be more of a 24/7, you work when you need to work kind of schedule. And that doesn't mean that you're working constantly 24/7, right? We're not like freaking Terminator robots here, right? You should be able to pick your schedule that you be able to work on things when you want your schedule to be mapped out on. So for me, like I usually do all my work like during the night as far as the creative stuff. I do some of my emails and my meetings obviously during the day, but I also work remote, so I can kind of create my own schedule. But I always keep it in the sense that, at least for me, I always try to work on something every day. I have no problem working over the weekends, and I think my clients actually like that because they appreciate that. Like, oh yeah, like Eric, he's always attentive. He's always like keeping up on deadlines and, you know, sending in things earlier. But I do want to say too, it's not that you should be a slave to that either. You should set expectations sometimes, like if you're going on vacation or there's certain times or certain days that you're not available for your clients, let them know, they'll respect it for sure. I mean, you don't want clients to abuse your time, but I'm just saying, switch that mindset from thinking that you need to have a structured, you know, during the day I only work on things, and you're just off and you don't respond back to clients at all, because a lot of times those clients are gonna be like, man, I feel like they're not like taking my business as important, and I'm not important to them, and he's just kind of putting me off and just blowing me off, you know what I mean? So you don't want to do that. Switch that mindset for the time, work schedule, and I think you'll be good. Well, there you have it. 5 simple pivots that you need to do in order to become a successful freelancer. There's so many benefits to actually being freelance and kind of choosing your own destiny. It's challenging, but also exciting at the same time. That's it for this episode. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys want to get more in detail about how to get this rolling as far as being a freelancer, let me know. You can book a consultation down there. Check out my calendar, check out my availability for 30-minute or 1-hour consultations. I'd love to like pick your brain and figure out how we can get you set up for success. So we'll talk soon, and see you later.